Northern East.
Oh, Madam Speaker, the Waikato Medical School journey actually began 73 years ago when the first female National Party MP, Hilda Ross, was enthusiastically bidding for it for Hamilton. In 1952, the Auckland Hospital Board was planning a new hospital building and asked Auckland University College whether to provide an undergraduate medical school. Dr. A.T. Rogers suggested Hamilton due to its proximity to Waikato Hospital, which was the largest hospital in bed numbers at the time in New Zealand. Mrs. Hilda Ross, MP for Hamilton, later Dame, was enthusiastic. Support grew, but the idea was eventually turned down because Hamilton didn't have a university. So in an ironic twist of fate, Madam Speaker, what was the genesis of an idea for a medical school actually became the genesis of an idea for a university. And here we are, full circle. And I'd also just have to say, just over 2 years ago, before our campaign proper started, I was on holiday with my wife, and I heard that our leader, now the Prime Minister, was going to announce that National Party was going to rebid for the medical school in Waikato. And I cut my holiday short, Madam Speaker, because I wanted to be there. And just a couple of weeks ago, my wife said to me, well, how's that medical school coming along that you cut your holiday for? And I said, we're working on it, and I'm pleased today that we've got the medical school coming, and hopefully some redemption for cutting my holiday short with my wife. And Marie's here to support me today, and isn't it just wonderful? I know the opposition have been jibing for a while. What's been happening with that medical school? Well, I've got good news. It's coming. In my maiden speech just a little over 18 months ago, I said, imagine if we can. How's New Zealand's long overdue and first graduate degree medical school? Well, good news. It's coming. Championed by David Bennett and Tim McIndoe even back in 2016, and they took it to the campaign in 2017. Scott Simpson was part of that team and that enthusiasm, but the Labour Greens coalition did not support it. But through resilience, it has lived. Through the advocacy of the Honourable Shane Reti and the drive of Vice-Chancellor Neil Quigley, the idea, the dream, the vision has survived. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Professor Joe Lane, Pro-Vice-Chancellor of Health at the University, for his advocacy and resilience in seeing this through. Myself, Tama Pultaka, and all our Waikato and neighbouring MPs are delighted with the result, and of course all our rural MPs because of the benefit. But the cost to government of $82 million and the contribution of the university and generous Waikato philanthropy of $150 million makes it a fantastic deal for the New Zealand taxpayer. The 4-year program is run by the University of Waikato and will accept its first cohort of 120 students in 2028, and they will all be graduated by 2031. So, Madam Speaker, I know people say, oh, why don't we just keep boosting Otago and Dunedin, Otago and Auckland? Madam Speaker, we've been doing that, and we've increased another 100 or so, Madam Speaker, but the problem is, with just 2 medical schools in New Zealand is one of the lowest represented in the OECD. If we were to compare ourselves to Australia, we'd be working on our 5th medical school, Madam Speaker. Our current medical workforce shortage, we have 1,810 doctors, including 220 GPs short, and by 2032, we'll be short 3,440 doctors and 870 GPs. We can't keep doing what we're doing because it's not working, Madam Speaker. We have to create a circuit breaker, and that's what the school will provide. Only 1/6 of current graduates actually become a GP, and only one-fifth of them work outside of Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch or Dunedin. This model has been proven around the world to successfully deliver more GPs and more rural doctors in Australia, Canada, the UK and the US. And the goal of Waikato Medical School is for 60% of graduates to become GPs and work outside the main urban centres, Madam Speaker. It's fantastic. The University of Waikato's Division of Health is also home to New Zealand's largest graduate entry nursery program and the country's first graduate entry programs in pharmacy and midwifery. So this is a marriage made in heaven. He hara te kura hawawara o Waikato, i te urapara noiho ki tētahi raruraru hawara. Engari, he whakatūranga, tēnei o te whakatīnanatanga. The Waikato Medical School is not just a response to a health crisis, it is a manifestation of delivery. It is a promise fulfilled from National. It is both an investment and a gift to our future for a healthier, fairer New Zealand with abundant opportunity.
Honourable Priyanka Radhakrishnan.
I have to be honest, that feels like a positive speech.
Well, here's what I'll say. Australia, Canada and England thanks the New Zealand taxpayer for the doctors.
Yeah. That's the thing, yeah. I mean, I agree with the part about the rural training. My friend John Fernando did do the rural GP course. And the reason why he wanted to do rural GP was because it had both the hands-on experience, such as having to do that on-location surgery, but also have that personal care relationship. And he did that section of his internship in the Wairarapa. So he spent 12 months doing his stuff based out of the Wellington Otago University campus, but ironically over the hill in the Wairarapa.
And that's great. We need more rural GPs, but
I don't think he's one now, though.
Yeah.
I don't think he is one now. I mean, put it this way, I've seen his mother more recently, and I do know that Catherine and Guto are looking at relocating to Christchurch because 3 or 4 of the 5 children are in Christchurch. So I can't remember Peter isn't, but effectively Richard, John, and Roshana are all in Christchurch now. So they were looking at relocating down there for retirement so that they could be there for, well, in theory, they should be grandchildren by now, considering I remember, but Peter was married when I was at college. Not sure about the rest of them, though, because, all sorts happen. I haven't really talked much with family in more recent times, but yeah. And I don't remember Catherine saying whether she was or wasn't a grandparent when I last saw her, but that was a couple of years ago.
Okay, all right.
But yes.
Right, steering towards data. Okay, I noticed that he made a claim about the OECD data, right? He's saying that, oh yeah, New Zealand, we haven't got, OECD data. We've got one of the lowest numbers of medical graduates per head of population. We haven't got enough schools. Yeah, so that data is from 2014 that he's citing there. But here's the real kicker, right? We actually have the second highest proportion of international medical graduates among the OECD countries behind Israel. So including 43% specialist workforce.
And many of those international graduates historically stayed in New Zealand.
Yeah, but here's the kicker. We've got poor retention rates. They're all heading off overseas back to Australia, or they're going to Canada, or they're going to England.
Yeah.
So having another school, great. The problem is that the question becomes, how does that retain? How do we retain the doctors? We're like, yep, we've got the school. Fantastic. We could increase numbers, or we could increase capacity down at Otago and up in Auckland. We could do that. Okay, whatever. We're going to distribute it for Waikato. Great. How are we going to retain the doctors? We still haven't answered that question. And again, like I said on previous commentary about Nelson Hospital, right? You got people being demoralized. You got people that are working in very high, they're working in hospitals that are at full capacity already, right?
Yeah.
And Dr. Gary Piunde has stated that a lot of people are shifting over to the private sector, and the private sector tends to prioritize cases that are very easy to handle, that are not severe chronic cases like what you would see with the elderly, or like what you'd see with disabled folk. And of course, you've got places like Nelson. We've got we've got an aging population, and we've got an increasing population as well. So
will these private hospitals want to deal with people like my grandmother?
No.
Whereas the public system, you're forced to deal with it. Yep. Whereas the private system, no, sorry, you're too high risk. Yeah.
So it's like with my father when he was working as an optometrist, right? Sometimes, he worked as a private optometrist. He wasn't working under the public, but he would take on some pretty hard cases because he's one of the cheaper optometrists in town, right? My dad was very dedicated to dealing with people and a lot of his patients were from the Rimutaka prison and were elderly people. They didn't have a lot of money. So those were the people that my father were regularly seeing. The people that couldn't afford to go to other more expensive private optometrists and who had quite complex needs. But not every private provider is like that. And quite often he had to refer them onto the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And we're getting to a point now where you could have an optometrist like my father who's, offering services at a much lower price than, the rest of the optometrists or whatever sector they're in. A much lower competitive price. But the problem is that if they've got something really bad, like cancer or something, they've got to go to the hospital. Now what? Yeah,
exactly. Will they have...
Free market can't fix everything.
Yeah. Your optometrist, can go work out exactly what lenses your glasses need, or what you need for glasses, and get your sight there. But they can't sit there and remove cancer from an eye, or cancer that causes, can cause a deterioration of eyesight. Like my grandma's eyesight issues, no surgery can change it. She's she's already done cataracts.
Yep.
That got her 10 years.
Yep.
But she's when it was macular degenerator, you'll probably know what the words are better, being a daughter of an optometrist. There was nothing that could be done, and it was just basically you're going to have to adapt to this new norm.
Yeah, and for an elderly person, that's quite hard.
But this is my grandma you're talking about. But yes, you are right. Many elderly people, it's literally sit and do it. So there were two people who were there. My grandma was one, John Eyes was another. They both had cataracts operations the same year. They got the eyesight that pushed them out to the same point. Now, John had to have his son Tony take his driver's license off him. Okay? My grandma voluntarily gave up driving. And I think that's because my grandma's a female. My grandma's watched a lot of these things. She prepared to adapt. John didn't. John died after having was it a stroke that later broke his hip in the middle of the 2020 level 4 lockdown. My grandma, on the other hand, had just been slowly adapting, making changes through there, and every single time she hits a road bump, things get changed and improved, and she just keeps adapting. You know, I watched John, who just basically, the loss of eyesight basically threw him into an early grave. Now, I think John did hit, I'm not sure if John hit 90, but basically I watched both of them, you know, all these different things go up and down, and then one was a bit adaptive, one wasn't, and, you know, the one that was adaptive is still living today, and the one that wasn't, sadly passed away, you know, in the middle of a COVID lockdown.
But you can see that, you know, for a private business, right, working with an elderly person who may not have much money, it's like it's working at a loss, right? Because they've got often chronic issues. They may have poor health outcomes, or you know, there's not much you can work with there. But that's why it's, you know, and that's why they just get shunted onto the public system. But the public system's already at capacity. You've got people who are poor. You've got people that may not be able to afford preventative care or private care, so they go into the public care when it gets really bad, and it just snowballs, right? Yeah.
Actually, both my grandma and John did pay for the cataracts private, and I think they went to the same hospital.
Cataracts is not too hard of an operation.
No, you've got to wait for it to reach a certain point. And for both of them, it was in their 80s. Or John might have just been on the turn point. Grandma might have just been over. John might have just been under. But it was the same year it happened. And it was the tip. But you've got to wait for cataracts to reach a certain point. And that was the tipping point. And for both of them, it just basically sat there and did it. And, I mean, you know, for my grandma, it meant that she could do grandparent job, you know, grandparent role great. For John, he... basically, I think that added an extra 10 years to his life, you know, because, you know, he had a very adventurous 10 years in his 80s, and, like, he was buying these big-ass trains that would, like, be that big and had a G-gauge railway built in his backyard.
The thing about cataracts, though, is that they're relatively, you know, they're not too expensive to treat. But let's say you get something a lot more complex and, you know, you're an elderly person, you're going to be shunted off to the public sector.
Yeah, true. And I do know the public sector doesn't tend to want to do, doesn't want to sit down there. Not the public sector has rules, because I know it's very difficult to get both eyes done on the public sector. I do know that, because you have to do one eye and then you have to do the other. You can't do them both at once.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We ended up talking about cataracts.
Yeah, but that was one of the things that, you know, Dr. Gary was saying as well. It's like they'll treat stuff like that. You know, it's like, okay, we can do that. That's pretty quick. Yeah,
and it's interesting, you know.
Great.
Yeah, and it's interesting, just like the different things about cataracts. Yeah. Let's get on to